Hello everyone, I'm Ricardo Dias and I am currently a quality engineering manager at Blip and FanDuel. Even though I completely stumbled in the quality engineering area, I barely knew what a unit test was so that you can have an idea. I fell in love with it right away. Since I started my journey in the safety critical aviation area, I try to complement my knowledge in different areas such as e-commerce, fashion e-commerce, artificial intelligence, and more recently in the betting industry. During my experience, I always tried to keep a hands-on approach where my motivations were always to keep learning new things and helping other people also evolve and thrive in their daily work. So, this presentation is about the 7 habits of the highly effective tester. And you might be asking, why did I choose this topic? One of the good things that this recent pandemic brought was that I resumed my reading habits. Even though I had a newborn son and all that work and fun that comes with it, some of you might relate with that. One of the books that was on the shelf begging to be read was Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of the Highly Effective People. So after finishing the book and between singing some lullabies and changing some diapers, thank God I did not create a resolution to attend a musical audition, I asked myself, how can I apply these ideas to my role as a software tester? Are there any actual actionable things that I can do and that I can work on? How can I share my experience with others and help them in their daily work? Then I gathered all of these ideas and I created this presentation. However, this talk is not supposed to be a fixed instructions manual, far from that. The idea is to actually promote the discussion in the community and to listen to your own interpretations of these habits. So, as I go through the 7 habits, take some time to reflect on how you have your own, or how you can have your own action plan to implement them. And one other thing that you should take into account is the mindset that you will have while embracing these habits. It's really fundamental that you take an inside-out approach to these habits. Do not look for these improvements as a means to improve your public image, your social interactions, your appearance, although all of these are important, I recognize that, but more important than all of that, to have real success, you must live by the right values of integrity, humility, modesty, and courage. That's how you can truly grow as a professional. And when you integrate these values in your life, things will be much easier and success will come more naturally, of course. And it's really easy to look for shortcuts, to look for quick fixes for things, so the magical solutions that will change things overnight. But you really need to fight that temptation of following these simple solutions, and that's how you will sow the seeds of greatness in your work. So before diving deep into each one of these habits, let's take a broader look at all of them. We can divide them in 2 different groups. The independent ones, be proactive, begin with the end in mind and put first things first. Those will help you achieve a private victory. They will move you from a dependent state to an independent state. The second group will help you achieve public victory. And this will facilitate the transition from an independent tester to an interdependent tester. You will take advantage of the skills that you learn to become independent, and you will teach and apply them to your team. And these 3 habits for the interdependence are think win-win, seek first to understand, then to be understood, and synergize. And then there's the 7th habit, which is sharpen the saw. This habit can be applied when you are independent or interdependent, individually or as a team. It's incredibly important that you have a growth mindset and always look to learn new things. In a more individual way, this can be new frameworks, for example, new programming languages. You can implement a different process in your team that will help you deliver faster and with more quality. So you can see how this sharpen the saw habit can be applied in your work. So, without further ado, let's deep dive into the 7 habits. The first habit I want to talk to you about is be proactive. To understand these habits, you really need to understand the concepts of the circle of concern and the circle of influence. The circle of concern contains all of the things that you can control in your daily life. These are things like the weather, politics, what other people think of you, and many, many other things. And the circle of influence consists on the things that you can control. Your attitude, what you read, which skills you learn, and how you spend your free time, for example, etc., etc. And you can choose to be reactive and complain all the time about what you can control and don't take action or ownership whatsoever, or you can be proactive and focus on what you can control by changing the way you deal with things you can control. This will help you a lot in your life, because in life either you act or you are acted upon. So let's make the exercise of how you can apply this. As you know, as a tester, there are lots of things that you can control that can drive you crazy in your daily work. Your test environment has problems and is down all the time. You might not have the test data you need when you define your tests. The software is so buggy that you can't even do a simple smoke test after it's deployed to an environment, for example. You take too long to test a feature because it has some unexpected complexity and bad requirements. Your automation might be too slow and is blocking your continuous integration process. So I could stay here all day long talking about all these problems, and most of you will come up with better examples on these kinds of things. But considering this difficult scenario, you can have two different attitudes. You can complain about all of this, or you can roll up your sleeves and really understand what needs to be done to make your and everyone in your team's life better. So you can change the fact that these problems occur, they will occur, but you can study, you can brainstorm, and you can really solve them. And the amount of frustration that you will have in your team or dealing with these obstacles can really make a difference in your life as a tester and in your life in general. So practicing these habits really brings control to your life and can have a contagious effect in your team, and that will help your team to face the most complex challenges that you have. So have an action plan to implement this habit. You need to start asking some hard questions and act upon the answers. Okay, so imagine you have test environment problems. Why is your test environment down, for example? Is it because you have a lot of automation running in it that uses a lot of its resources, for example? Can you change your tests not to depend so much on this, for example? Is there any possibility of having environments that are not shared between too many teams? Can you make sure the developers in your team do a smoke test after deploying new features, for example, to reduce this back and forth? How can you make sure that your requirements are tight before the implementation starts? Should you analyze the user stories and acceptance criteria before the refinement sessions? Interact more with product owner or with your stakeholders? Ask the hard questions as soon as possible? So when you get the answers to all of these questions, act upon them, and you will probably realize that you have more control over these issues than you thought. So this is the most important of all the 7 habits, is be proactive. The second habit is begin with the end in mind. To understand the essence of this habit, you need to understand that all things are created twice, in your mind and in the real world. When you set a goal for yourself or for your team, visualizing the final result will give you the motivation to achieve it faster. If you are passionate about your work as a tester and the products that you are testing, you can see it as something that will make the world a better place. To understand why you do what you do, it's really important. Each bug, each improvement that you find and that you will help fix, and there will be some out there, as you know, will represent a happier user base and will give you a true sense of purpose. So you probably experience a tremendous sense of pride when you see a product that was tested by you in production, being used by thousands of people that had your contribution in it. So I don't know about you, but for me that's a good feeling to have. However, motivation alone is not enough to get this. So to have a product with high quality standards, you need to take some time and to think of a strategy. So don't create a strategy that you want to follow blindly, because there will always be room for creativity. That's very important for us as software testers. Nevertheless, you will need to know as soon as possible how you will test your feature, way before you actually start testing it. So come up with the scenarios as soon as possible in your development process, and map them in your plan. And also make sure that your scenarios will map correctly in your testing strategy. Which ones of them will be unit tests, which ones will be components, which ones will be end-to-end tests. Make sure that you had the majority of them in the bottom of your testing pyramid, that they will run faster. If will you have performance tests? What are your non-functional requirements, for example? How will you do your exploratory testing sessions? Do you know the risks of the project, for example? Do you know if it depends on other teams' work to be done? And one effective way also to know if we are releasing the right product is actually asking the end users, and ask this iteratively. If you don't have the right product, all of this will be for nothing. You have to make sure that your customers are happy. You have to make sure that what will this feature bring in terms of profit for the company. These are all really important questions to ask and to find the answers for. And also document all your findings. And most importantly, be flexible and adapt your plan if you need to change it. That's also very important. But if you do all of this, the end that you had in mind, the perfect ending that you had in mind, will come naturally. The third habit is put first things first. So as you know, as testers, we are natural multitaskers. We always have new things going to our to-do lists. But the hard part on this is to be able to say no to some of these tasks without feeling like a failure to your colleagues, to your stakeholders, to your managers, etc. We need to ask this hard question: what is the most important thing to get done by the end of this day? This is really important to define your priorities with your manager, to have a very clear vision on this, and then you need to focus relentlessly on that. To help you do this, you need to categorize your work, and there are 4 quadrants to do this. Firstly, eliminate things from quadrant 4, all the busy work, repetitive work, social media distractions, procrastination. I know it's easier said than done. I'm also guilty of being distracted with the latest cat videos on YouTube, but that's okay. And then try to move some things from quadrant 3 to quadrant 2. So defer pointless meetings, try to replace them with asynchronous updates, and then when you have a priority straight, defer external requests to a later stage. Don't be afraid to use your manager to do this, and define less moments to reply to internal messages, to emails, to all that sort of stuff. This will free up your time to things that are more important, even if they don't feel as urgent. They will give you the opportunity to think strategically. And some examples of this can be testing strategy definition, for example, the tech debt reduction, and increasing, for example, the automated test coverage. Planning and executing ahead will also prevent some of the things that might arise from quadrant 1, the important and urgent stuff, such as live incidents, hard deadline projects, last minute preparations, all that sort of thing. I know this can be difficult to apply in the real world. We are often swamped by requests from everyone things that need to be done by yesterday, but you've probably heard the phrase, when everything is urgent, nothing is urgent. So really set the record straight and have in mind this quote from Dale Carnegie: an hour of planning can save you 10 hours of doing. So these first 3 habits will help you move from a dependent tester to an independent one. You will achieve self-mastery by following them. However, we all work in teams, so it's really important to achieve habits collectively and have a really interdependent mindset. So let's take a look at the interdependent habits. The 4th habit is think win-win. Sometimes you think that for you to achieve something, someone has to lose. For instance, when you report a bug later in the project, you might think that your delivery due date will be compromised. But isn't this a really win-win situation? Prevent a production incident that will impact the users and how they perceive your product and potentially drive them away forever. So what's a small delay compared with a huge use base reduction, for example? Make your team, make your managers and stakeholders see that it's really important, and actually make everyone search for the mutual benefits on everything you believe that should be done. Don't get a lack of abundance mindset creep in, because this will prevent you to see the bigger picture. There's clearly a mutual benefit in quality. Quality will always be something that's needed inside a software team, even with the constant change of what's expected to be a software tester. We are not bottlenecks, we are enablers for our teams. And this mindset is really something that a team can't live without, and that brings the product to another level. And it's your job to make your colleagues, to make your managers, to make your stakeholders see it. Never let them stop looking for the mutual benefits. The next habit is seek first to understand and then to be understood. When you are arguing with someone, we often say that that person does not listen to us. But did we really make an effort to understand their views? Or are we just waiting for the other person to finish talking so that we can share what's our take in that subject? To make the discussion effective, we need to confront different points of view, and that doesn't work if we don't consider anything different from what we are thinking. We get mad because other people don't share our views, and that's not okay if we don't have a reason for it. Imagine a scenario where you are really an experienced tester and you just joined the company. You have your own background, you have your own experiences, and that succeeded and that failed, and possibly an approach in mind on how you want to integrate yourself in this new reality and try to change things around. And your motivation to do so is because it worked out well in the previous company or in your previous team. But before doing all that, did you really take the time to listen to other people explaining the architecture to you, for example? To lay out the actual pain points that you need to consider to implement your plan? So there's always an infinity of ways to test the same feature. You have to listen empathically to all of the possibilities, and then explain yours so that everyone is on the same page before jumping ahead into rushed conclusions. So only with these listening skills, you and your team will achieve the best solution possible. So, the last habit from the interdependence group is Synergize. This habit is all about taking advantage of all the good things about collaboration, bringing different perspectives to the table that help us fight some biases that we might have while testing the same product over time. So we all know what can happen when several testers are together. They bring out the best of each other, and that's a great thing. Never underestimate what a fresh set of eyes and a different approach might bring to the table. Together, you will come up with questions that were never asked before, and find bugs that could not be found even in the most completed automation suite. Don't be afraid to share. Don't be afraid to brainstorm your testing strategies. Give the proper context and ask for honest feedback. That's the only way that you will be able to grow. Promote collaboration across teams and testing large-scale initiatives, making it an easier process. Organize mock testing sessions with other testers, for example, developers, with product owners, to make sure your product is really bulletproof. And these three habits, think win-win, seek first to understand and then to be understood, and synergize, will help you move you and your team to an interdependent mindset towards software testing. The last habit, sharpen the saw, is not exclusively related with independence or interdependence. However, it will help you to implement all of these habits. As testers, we need to keep up with our soft skills, with our hard skills, and the industry is always changing. We can never settle and assume that our techniques will always be the state of the art. So we must adapt and understand in which way the world is evolving, and never fall behind. Another practical example of this is how can be applied with in the lack of investment that occurs in test automation sometimes. Imagine a scenario when you are taking too long to test because you don't have any sort of automation. However, your project has a hard deadline that you can meet with manual testing of a small subset of these scenarios. So we don't invest in automation right away. When you have a new version to release, the time to test it will obviously increase because you have more things to check. because your regression suite will become bigger. So when this has a snowball effect, and when will this end? When you make your manager and your stakeholders see that there's a return of investment in test automation, when you estimate your development work with automated testing, you have a compound effect and a return of investment that's bigger than everyone believes, and you can actually quantify it. So what you should say in this case is, I can't afford not to sharpen the saw. Some other ideas that on how you can apply these habits: you can define your training plan with your manager. It's really important. Attend conferences in your areas of interest. You can set personal learning goals as well. That's very important. And you can teach what you learn to others, because that's the best way to learn anything, is to teach it to others. So let's go over the 7 habits once again. First, the independence habits. Be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first. Then the interdependence habits. Think win-win, seek to understand, then to be understood, and synergize. And last but not least, always sharpen the saw. To finish, I would like to send a challenge to all of you. Apply these habits and teach them to your fellow colleagues. The best way to learn is to use them daily. But don't try to implement them all at once, because, as you know, slow and steady wins the race. And lastly, always keep pushing yourself towards testing excellency.